Uh, I suppose that most of our friends who are here, are they are very keen to understand what is going on in global politics and what kind of changes we are seeing and expecting, and to exactly which direction the global politics is going to. Of course, this is an era of information. So as a professor, as an academician, the biggest challenge for us is that whenever we make a presentation like this, most of the audiences are much more informed. Rather, sometimes they have real-time information than a professor might have. So in terms of information, indeed, most of you must be aware, must be following whatever is happening in the Middle East or other part of the world. So, however, there is a difference between information and a systematic understanding of the events and the patterns to which direction they are leading to. So my uh, objective of this discussion is not to give you much of information, rather how to understand this information and how to make a sense of these events. So that's why I have chosen a topic, the making of a new world disorder. Generally, when we say order, it means that we have some things which are kept in a beautiful way, which do not make any nonsense, which are looking and which are most of the people they like in the way they are. So we have very subjective definition of order. So sometime your order can be my disorder, and sometime my disorder can be your order. So it doesn't matter. So order is a subjective term. So even if we use order, it means that someone else would like to change this order. So it is very competitive space. The Soviet Union had been trying to change the order which was dominated by the West and liberal market economy. So for the Soviet Union, the order dominated by the West was mostly an order of chaos and instability. So it is a very competitive term. So that's why we do not have an agreed upon definition of order and disorder. That's why I have kept it order and disorder. On sociological and political perspective, also I have chosen this topic to inform that in the last 2000 years, if we see the world has changed systematically in a very uh, radical and transformative way. So much so that the entire political economy and human society have changed drastically. So if we have a look on these type of transformations, for example, the for example, we are talking today about the fourth industrial revolution. So before the fourth industrial revolution, we had what we call as proper industrial revolution, and before industrial revolution, we had a agricultural economy, and before that, we had, for example, uh, the invention of steam engines was considered as the biggest revolution. Electricity was considered as the biggest revolution, which has changed the way human societies used to live and act because of the type of things which it has changed the society. For example, we in social sciences, we considered the invention of wheel as the biggest transformation in human society, for simple reason that it has given speed and volume of our entire transportation system. So with the invention of wheel, human society had started mass volume of export and import, transfer of things, transportation of human being, migration, and travel has had massively increased with the invention of wheel. And then the wheels got speed with the steam engine, then electricity, then train, and then aeroplanes. And now we are talking about possibly, if Elon Musk succeeds, we are talking about to have our first colony at Mars, maybe in the next 25, 30, maybe 50 years. But I can imagine that we are not very far away from having our first colony at Mars. With the kind of inventions and research which we are doing at this time, we are very close to achieve that objective, I suppose. So in this way, we have to look at what kind of transformations we are looking at this time, and how these transformations are creating so much disruption and disturbances in the existing orders all over the world. So what we see as the crisis in Iran, or the relations between Israel and Iran and United States and the Middle East, is not just a small political event, or not just a temporary difference of opinion between two countries and three countries. It is rather a part of the chain of events for a major transformation which the global politics is going through. And in the next maybe 30 years and 50 years, we will have a different political economy, a different political structure, maybe with these kind of happenings. So if we look at, for example, we are now asking why exactly Russia and China and global South countries, including India, are not intervening in these kind of events. If we just imagine in the Cold War time, most of these countries, China and Russia, would have intervened very effectively and very actively to stop and to prevent such a situation. And we remember the events of Cuba missile crisis. So why exactly Russia or China or India are not much interested in preventing such a disastrous scenario? The thing is that we have to look at the changing political economy and the changing order in which Russia, India, and China or other countries of global South do not have a fundamental difference of opinion from that of the Israelis and Americans. So in that sense, we can say that the global politics is having a kind of agreement about the future direction. The difference is about who should lead these changes and who should be having what kind of share. That is just a matter of difference. So there is no serious disagreement between all these countries about the future of human civilization and the kind of order which we should have. So that's why I am trying to explain these things in that way. For example, if you look at my PowerPoint now, I have just tried to give you a brief understanding. For example, if you look how exactly these transformations have taken place. And to cut short the story, because you know much of the story, but we have to come to the story of Industrial Revolution. So if we look at Industrial Revolution has created a different kind of state and society. In Industrial Revolution, we had mass production, urbanization, the division of classes, because mass production requires mass a level of workforce and labor. So the entire workforce which was working in agricultural fields had started moving from agricultural fields or villages to cities. And when they came to cities, they were divided into lower class, middle class, and upper class. And accordingly, the class struggle started, and the entire city urbanization or the city structure was divided into different classes. That's why we say some cities are, some areas are posh areas, upper class areas, and some areas are slum, and some areas are middle income areas. And these division of classes had created frictions and change and disturbances among the society and conflict of relations. And as a result, we saw the rise of socialist movements, which had started speaking about the exploitation of labor force at the hand of capitalist classes or the bourgeoisie classes. And as a result, we saw socialist revolutions against capitalism. But at the same time, all the socialist revolutions were having an agreement that the supremacy of material development should be there. So even though socialism was having fundamental differences with the capitalism, but on the issue of material superiority or materialism, they were together, and they were seeing the welfare or the future of human civilization only through the lens of materialism. So industrialization had two perspectives: the state-led perspectives, which were socialist, and the private sector or market economy led transformation, which we say as a capitalist society. By the byproduct of this capitalist industrial revolution was colonialism. And before that, as you know, nation states had already come, and nation states had started becoming advanced because new financial institutions, banks, international banks, local banks, and different kind of financial institutions had started emerging. And the financial institutions became one of the biggest determinant of the new political economy. Today, you can understand it in much better way, but to understand these issues just 200 years before or 300 years before was much more difficult, because at that time, these institutions were just emerging. Today, we have fully advanced financial institutions all over the world. So much so that we do not, we are gradually coming to a state that then we will have a complete cashless economies. So we don't carry any kind of hard money in our pockets. We just have cards. And even after some time, we will not have even cards. We will just have what we call as cryptos or these kind of computer-based currencies. With nation states coming into being and now advanced, then we have saw the movement of globalization, which is primarily about the mass production or the capitalist economy is being diversified or being expanded to global scale. For example, look at this. For example, if we supply chain, I just want to share something about supply chain. If I have, I think I have not added that one. But if you look at supply chain, so one laptop which we are using right now, this one single laptop which I have on my table has come here with participation of at least 30, 40 countries. One country is preparing the cable, one country is preparing the software, another country is making maybe screen, keyboard. So different components are being made by different countries. So in this way, if we look at the supply chain pattern, global economy is becoming integrated, and the mass production which used to be in one country now is being divided into different countries. So the iPhone which you must be using right now must be made in China, made in India, or made in maybe some other country. So these changes have also been being said as globalization. Why? Because with globalization, we have seen that the skills, labor force is in different countries, so we can use them. Raw material and different kind of supply chain things are available, so we are using them. So with globalization, we had started saying that perhaps the supremacy of nation state is declining, and globalization may be an irreversible thing. And as a result, we were also talking about global citizenship or international citizenship, so that the uh, the hard the nationalist fundamentalism might decline. But within uh, 50 years of globalization, we have seen that we have started talking about deglobalization. I don't use the term deglobalization, but I am carefully I'm using securitization of nationalism or national state. So even though we have globalized things in terms of economy, but nation states are becoming more securitized and they are becoming advanced. So globalization is shifting from it is concentrating on economic side, but it is not focusing much on political side. So on political side, it is becoming more deglobalized. Now, how we have to look at these changes? Give me 2 minutes more to explain the fourth industrial revolution, which we are looking at. The entire the kind of changes which we are looking at international economy, from agricultural economy to service sector based economy. And now if you look at big tech, example, look at global unicorn, which countries are they are concentrated at. The United States has the 554 unicorns plus. India has 64, China has 164, 180. And accordingly, you can see that all countries have these kind of companies. And most of these companies are about uh, in technology, big data, of course, cybersecurity, e-commerce, and most of them are technology-driven sectors, and in broader terms, service sectors. Agriculture is not dominating the new economy. And when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, it means that the role of agriculture is going to decline, and the domination of artificial intelligence and domination of entire service sector is going to be very precise and in a more defined way. So the fourth industrial revolution will be is going to be much more dramatic in terms of changing our the style of labor which we used to have and style of work which we used to have. For example, we are talking about the changes which artificial intelligence is going to bring in our uh, type of the way we recruit people, and there will be so much layoff, there will be new learning, there will be new way of official arrangements. So many things are going to change. Now, having said that, if we look at the hard facts of this fourth industrial revolution, at core of these industrial revolution or any other industrial revolution still is global energy trade. So what has happened in the last 30 years is that 30 years before, the United States was net importer of oil and gas from mostly from the Middle East. At that time, China, India, Japan, Germany, most of the Western countries, most of the European countries, especially the United States, was completely dependent on the Gulf oil or on the Middle Eastern energy resources. In the last 30 years, what has happened is that the United States has become net exporter of energy sources. So with shale gas and which increasing capacity of storage, the United States is not dependent on the Gulf or the Middle Eastern oil, or there are many new players which have already emerged. As a result, the global energy trade has changed. The Gulf countries are no longer the factor to change anything. They are one of the players, but they are not the dominant player. Of course, things will be disrupted, will be changed, but there are Russians, there are Venezuela, there is even Malaysia is also coming. Russia is a big, in a big way, it is changing the energy supply, and of course the United States. And at the same time, the renewable energy sources are also in increasingly in use of every country's national energy policy. So in global energy trade, patterns have changed completely. And in a way that it has also changed the security dependency or security orders of these countries. So for example, if you look at the relation between Saudi Arabia and the United States, it were defined by energy supply, and in exchange, the United States was supposed to secure the Middle East, especially the Gulf countries, and more specifically, Saudi Arabia. Today, when China, India, and Japan are the main consumers of Saudi energy, Americans are not in that way the biggest importer, even if Americans are importing so much, but they are basically reselling to other countries. They are not necessarily buying for America. So this has changed the pattern of relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States, or mostly with the Europe. So the Gulf West relations have changed completely, especially in terms of energy. So with changed energy relations between the Gulf and Western countries, then there is a contingent change, which is about security. So Americans were supposed to provide security umbrella to Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries, but they don't feel that kind of need today, and they are pressurizing Saudi Arabia to diversify their security arrangement and do something in a different way. That is why there is increasing pressure on Saudi Arabia to recognize the state of Israel and normalize relation with Israel, even at the cost of Palestinian state. So Saudi Arabia does not have enough choice or enough space to play. If they have to have security guarantees from the United States or from any other country, they have to make many and significant concessions to that state. The other option is that these countries should try to have their own security arrangement. They should be self-dependent on having their own security. And for that, they need specifically the deterrence which should deter any aggression or any aggressor country against these to become a threat. So the Gulf countries do not have that kind of deterrence, and for the long history of their energy centric economy in the last 90 years, 80 years, they had bought so much arms, weapons from the West, but they have not bought any kind of, or they have not invested. They have never invested in advancing their own capabilities. As a result, today, when global energy market has shifted, has changed, Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries are feeling isolated and disregarded, even by the closest ally, the United States, in discussing the issues of the region and to put pressure on Israel for doing better things for Palestinians. And there are no signs that the United States would be making any pressure on Israel in future, even if the most pro-Palestine government or administration comes in the United States. It doesn't matter whether they are led by the Democrats or the Republicans. It doesn't matter. The simple fact is that the energy relation between the Gulf countries and the West have completely changed, and it does not favor the prospects for a Palestinian state, and it does not make the kind of pressure it used to have in 1970s or 80s. So things have changed. Now, coming to uh, Iran side, Iran is an exception. For the last since 1979, of course, there are so many domestic challenges for Iran, and they have perhaps, I would say, one of the worst model of governance, I would say. They are not much democrat. They are not supporting the kind of neoliberal worldview which many would like to favor. But at the same time, the fact is that Iranians have invested hugely in uh, in advancing their own capability and advancing and acquiring the kind of necessary knowledge and know-how which might acquire Iran a deterrence. So in the last 40 years, we have seen that Iranians have invested in defense industry, in science and technology. Perhaps in the Middle East, the best research and development expenses have been done only by Iran. So we can see that because of the trend which Iranians have is that they are going to become a major power in science and technology, in having a better defense capability. So in this way, Iranian administration has been singled out as a threat, not because Iranians are really very bad people or having really bad administration, because the Western governments have accepted and have tolerated even worse administration in the world. They can have friendship with any kind of dictator, any kind of brutal administration anywhere in the world, as long as that brutal administration is supporting and favoring their interest. But because Iranians are not supporting that kind of worldview, so Iranians have become specifically a major threat, and they have been dehumanized by Israelis and by the United States by merely by a fact that they are not favoring the West-led world view. So in this way, Iran has been singled out. So when exactly Iran was going to become a game-changing threat for Israel, we don't know. But the thing is that we have seen that Netanyahu has been saying this for last 25 years, that Iran is just 1 week away, 2 weeks away, 1 month away, maybe 6 months away from acquiring nuclear capability. Iran was not having that nuclear capability, especially for weapon. And Iran had always said that Iran does not aim to have weapon-grade uranium and does not intend to acquire nuclear weapons, because Islamically, they say that acquiring nuclear weapon or having nuclear weapon is simply prohibited and according to Islam, haram, according to their own jurisprudence. So, however, the West never trusted on these words, and they expected that they thought that Iran must be secretly trying to acquire that weapon-grade nuclear energy and uranium. So, Iran has become a difficult thing. Now, look at the changes which the West-led world order has brought us. Number one, it is a new liberal market economy. Even China has surrendered to this new liberal market economy, and China is no longer a socialist country. China is a state capitalist country, we can say. And in coming years and decades, China will be much more liberalized, much more changed, and will become like a market economy. Russia is also on that way, in that direction. And other countries also gradually they are adopting that new liberal market economy, which in this sense, if we say that the new liberal world order is winning, yes, we can say that most of the countries are now compromising on that idea, and they are simply leaving, they are coming out of that socialist economy. India, China, Russia, and other countries. So in this way, of course, the Western dominance is still is going to stay there. However, what is also changing is that the 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 Western dominance, which was supposed to be there, for example, if you look at the earlier theories of core and periphery or dependency theory. So in this way, the pattern was that the global capitalism was mostly one way, one-sided. So Americans were controlling most of the advanced sectors in their country, and they were sharing just medium level things or low level things with other countries. So technological denial was there, skill denial was there. And for example, if you look at the entire outsourced economy or outsourcing economy, so why exactly this globalization story is not very good? Because Americans had basically outsourced uh, the dirty work of the industry. So a sector for which they could have made, for example, they could have spent $5,000 for one person. They had given this to an Indian and Pakistani or a Filipinos to do it in just $200 or $500, maximum $1,000. So in this way, they have basically saved more money by doing outsourcing. So in this way, the globalization story was not that good a story, not that much good a story. So it had confirmed that the core and periphery or the kind of dependency theory is still working, which means that the Western countries have tried to control the most profiting or most profit-making sectors with them, and they shared with other countries the sectors which they don't want to work. So in this way, if, for example, I have tried to understand the workforce in the era of fourth industrial revolution, so where exactly these workforce is concentrating? So for example, if you look in India, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and many other countries, most of the low and medium skilled workforce is concentrating in these countries. So agriculture, economy, informal sector, uh, you can define these countries with the low and medium skilled economy workforce. Coming to, for example, the United States, most of European countries, they have the highest concentration of high skilled workforce, which means that research and development or innovation, the example of unicorn is already there. So the concentration of high skills in these countries is still there, which means that the imbalance between the Western countries and non-Western countries is still going to be same, and it is not going to change easily. China, medium skill countries, China, Mexico, Vietnam, Turkey, even Iran, and some of the Gulf countries are also trying to bring that kind of changes. If we look at the rise of rest, we can see, even though it is very slow, even though it is not that radical, but the thing is that things are changing, and the rest of countries are acquiring similar technology, and we can say the technological gap is bridging uh, year by year. And in coming months, for example, China's rise in technology, in all sorts of technology, is simply very dramatic. So when we say that China might become the next America, uh, precisely because the kind of technology and the kind of research and development which China is doing is simply surprising for most of the Western countries. And as a result, there is a possibility that in the next 50 years, maybe in 100 years, the global power will shift from the Western countries to non-Western countries, especially in favor of China, maybe in coming years, in coming decades, in favor of India also. Where exactly Turkey, Iran, Gulf countries, most of the Middle East countries will be there in that time? So if you look at the kind of human development index, most of the Muslim countries, most of the Gulf countries have done much better in the last 2 decades. So for example, if you look at Iran, Qatar, Turkey, even Pakistan, even despite the bad economy, but Pakistanis have done much better in science and technology and other STEM subjects. So in this way, many of the Muslim countries have done much better, and there is a possibility that they might join China, they might join India, they might join Russia in challenging the Western dominance on the fourth industrial revolution, which we are saying. And also because they have the biggest market, and also because they have their own workforce, and by increasing Islamophobia and xenophobia in most of the Western countries, there is a possibility that um, the 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 attraction of the West might decline, and Asian and non-Western countries, and specifically Muslim countries, might emerge as new center of powers, especially as middle powers. So what will happen at that time? Now, with Iran, we can say, we can understand that the Iran crisis, which is happening right now, is not just about Iran's nuclear ambitions. It is not just about Iran's differences with Israel. If you ask me, Iran can recognize a state of Israel just today or next day. But the question is, what will be Israel's response? In the Western grammar of power, they just want, they are trying to evolve a global order in which the dominance of the West is unchallenged. And within that order, they need not just global Western hegemony, but also certain regional hegemons. And for that regional hegemon post, the vacancy is there, and that vacancy has one of the strongest candidate, which is State of Israel. So State of Israel is ready to provide that kind of services for the global hegemon, the West, as a regional hegemon in the Middle East. So this post of regional hegemon has so many candidates. Turkey is one of the candidates. Iran could be one of that candidates. Even Saudi Arabia would like to become that candidate, and Egypt would like to become that candidate. And Israel is trying and is willing to have the role alone and in unchallenged way. Whether Israel can control that role for a long time, I'm not sure, because the population, demography, economy, and many other factors do not support, do not favor Israeli ambitions. Even if Israel is massively supported by the United States and the entire West, but Israel has certain limits. So Israel's hegemonic ambitions have a limit, and they are not simply sustainable. They are not going to be supported by the real situations, especially I would say the demography does not support Israel. And the kind of political ideas which they have also do not favor Israel's ambitions. So in this way, the rise of the rest, or the rise of regional powers in West Asia, in the Middle East, especially Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, is a fact which nobody can deny, nobody can stop. And the situation in these countries and socio-political and economic changes in these countries are supporting that rise and that advance in a very sustainable way. So only way to stop these countries is to create certain disruptions. These disruptions will be in the best possible way to have these kind of prolonged conflict. So if you look at Israel and American understanding, it is simply the fact that they would like to see a prolonged conflicts in this region. So if Iran is for example, maybe yesterday there was a speech of Turkish intelligence head Ibrahim Kalin. Ibrahim Kalin has said that Israel is trying to push the region into a sectarian war, a sectarian conflict, and they would like to see a conflict between violent conflict between Sunnis and Shia, Kurds and Persians and Arabs and Turks. So they would like to see the entire region having fight with each other. And Turkey is trying to avoid these kind of conflicts. So in his speech, if you listen his speech, he has that kind of understanding that the new global order, the Western hegemony or Israelis' regional hegemony requires one conflict to stay in the region for a very long time, and even at the cost of instability, or even at the cost of human life. They simply don't care about these things. However, my own understanding is that despite the fact that Israelis might be willing to have this kind of changes, but the thing is that in global politics, things are changing in a very different direction. So first of all, there is a bridging technological gap between the West and the East. Even if I would say that Muslim countries, especially the Gulf countries and other Middle Eastern countries, have not spent on R&D as much as it was required. They are among the lowest spender of R&D. Maybe just Turkey and Iran are one of the best, slightly followed by the United Arab Emirates, maybe a fraction in Egypt as well. But most of the Arab countries, most of the Muslim countries are not simply spending much on R&D. And that is why the gap is not bridging in that speed, but just because these few countries are focusing so much on these technologies, I would say that this gap is changing in a much more positive way. Also, the fact that the last global, I would not say last global order, still it is going on. But the thing is that the entire warfare system is changing. The dominance or the significance of, for example, aircraft carriers, the dominance of highly advanced fighter jets, the F-35 or Russia's S-56. The centrality of fighter jet is gradually being challenged by new, very cheap, very economic technologies of AI-supported drones. If you look, there is no comparison between the American and Iranian power. There is no comparison at all. Iran stands nowhere. However, with having very cheap, very economic Shahid drones, Iran is changing the battleground in a very different way. And it is forcing the global power to have a dialogue, to have a diplomatic solution to stop further destruction and further disruption, simply because they did not recognize that the Iranian drones might disrupt their entire defense doctrine in that way. And the Turkish drone, which we had seen in Azerbaijan war, in Libya, in Syria, in other countries, had the same effect. So my point is that there is a bridging technological gap in between the Muslim countries and the West or other countries. So if this bridging technology, if this bridging continues, it means that there is a possibility to have greater autonomy in their regional security and in their regional arrangements. I'm not going to say that they would become another power bloc or independent bloc. It is not possible, at least in the next 50 years, maybe 100 years. The simple reason is why Muslim countries cannot become an independent power bloc, because of this economy. Still, the West is controlling the biggest industrial strength. The largest companies, the largest big tech are based in the in Western countries. So in Muslim countries are still much behind from acquiring this kind of industrial power. Again, so new technologies And then supply chain, if you look at supply chain, the supply chain at one time, it is very positive thing, but it has also created certain vulnerabilities for a global economy. So for example, Americans have two choices. Either they choose the fourth industrial revolution and they keep the highest advanced sectors with them and give away the non-advanced sectors to other countries. This is one choice. It means that it is kind of a shared global economy. If they become ultra-nationalist, they would say that they are going to keep everything with them, which means that even the lowest skill things also will be done by Americans. It means that these things will not be shared by as outsource economy say. So in that way, in that case, so they may not need that kind of a supply chain, which means that they are going to have their own supply chain at the domestic level. But as long as they are going to make a new fourth industrial revolution, they would need Chinese, they would need Indians, they would need Africa, South Africa, Brazil, all countries they would need. And in this way, the fourth industrial revolution would need the participation of other countries. But if they would like to become ultra-nationalists, then they have to disrupt these kind of supplies. And as a result, my understanding is that the role of Muslim countries and the role of West Asia, especially Iran, Turkey, and other countries, is going to expand, is going to increase in this entire supply chain. Of course, this energy supply will remain a factor, even though almost 60% energy is being supplied by most of the Middle Eastern countries. And for India, for China, and for most of the Asian countries which do not produce at all any kind of energy, so they would need the Middle East. So as a result, the centrality of the Middle East for Asian countries will remain unchanged and will remain there. So whether these countries can use this centrality in their favor or not, it is a question. For example, if you look at the Indian pattern, so Indian dependency on the Gulf oil has changed, has declined, for the reason that Indians have started importing more oil from Russia and from the United States and from other countries. So India has been trying to diversify its energy import from all over the world. And India does not want to have any kind of dependency on the Gulf oil. If India is not that much dependent on the Gulf oil, so India would have much greater autonomy in its foreign policy. So for example, if India has to support Israel or Iran, India might take a bold decision in favor of any of these countries because India simply does not, may not face that much disruption in future. But as of now, still there are some disruption in India's energy supply, as we are seeing in daily news. Now, with these kind of changes which we are looking, this Iran war has become one of the most important war. So if you look just 10 years before, Saudi Arabia would have supported any kind of regime change in Iran, any kind of American attack on Iran. If you look at the news of 2025, 2015 news of JCPO nuclear agreement between Americans and the Iranians, Saudis were so much angry about that agreement, and Saudis were so much upset with Obama administration because of this deal. Israelis, of course, they were also upset because they accused the Obama administration of surrendering to Iranians and for giving so much concessions to Iranians. But today, situation is so much different that it is Saudis, it is the Qataris, it is all other Gulf countries who are opposing this kind of war, or who are opposing any kind of regime change in Iran, for simple reason is that they know that if Iran is destroyed, if Iranian regime is changed, if any forceful change or even any kind of violent events happen in Iran, it is going to change the Saudi economy and Saudi future as well. That is the difference of opinion in the last 10 years. So even if Israelis and Americans are trying to change the regime, but Saudis do not want that regime change, at least at this moment of time, because they know very well that it is not going to favor the Saudi future. So there is a new change in the Middle East. The Gaza war was one of the factors, and they had recognized for the first time that the Abraham Accord, which was proposed by the Trump administration as the panacea of all regional issues, the Abraham Accord offered that Israel may not give Palestine an independent, autonomous Palestinian state, but Israel is ready to give an economic autonomy and economic independence to Palestinians, and enough room to run their economy. In exchange of this offer, they promoted the idea of Abraham Accord, and the United Arab Emirates and some other countries they wanted to recognize. Even the UAE had already recognized. So the Trump administration was offering the same proposal to Saudis and Egyptians, and Saudis simply had the demand that first of all Israel should recognize the state of Israel and allow some kind of state institutions so that Saudis can also recognize the state of Israel. But with the Gaza war, the Saudis came to know that the real intention of the Abraham Accord is not to create a Palestinian state or to give any kind of autonomy, even the economic autonomy, to the Palestinian state or Palestinian people. So the real intention of Israel are different, to establish Israeli hegemony all over the region. And this has created a lot of panic within Saudi state, within Egyptians, within Jordanians, within all other Western allies. And from Gaza war, they had started thinking that it is time to have their own regional security arrangement or new regional security architecture. Now, the real question is, I have an article which might be published in the next 2 days. Even if Saudis are not happy with the Americans and Europeans, even if Saudis are not much happy with the Israelis, and the entire region would like to have their own regional security architecture, much independent from the Americans, and in a way that they should not need the American security umbrella for them. But the option is that who can provide these kind of security guarantees? Russians are not ready to come ahead. Chinese are not ready to provide that kind of guarantees. And Indians, of course, they are not even have capability, and they are not have the willingness to provide that kind of a security umbrella to the Gulf states. So even if the region has every reason and willingness to have their own regional security architecture, more independence, more autonomy in their own regional affairs, but the thing is that there is no country in the world which is ready to offer the region the same guarantees. So as a result, what they are going to do is that they are going to create a subsystem within the Western system. So what we see as a step, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, and Pakistan, the 4 countries, the step model is precisely a subsystem of the Western security system. So there will be cooperation between STEP and NATO members or Western Bloc. And of course, STEP will also have cooperation with Russia and China, but their main support will come from the United States and from the Trump administration for now. So it is going to be a different model. Within region, the hegemony or centrality of Israel is going to decline. They aim to either Israel should behave properly in a very civilian way so that they can be part of regional security architecture. If Israel is not ready to be one of the partners, then Israel will be kept outside. And this idea of STEP is precisely to create a subsystem for the Western security architecture in which the Muslim countries, especially these STEP countries, can be the guarantor, can be the main responsible, and can have greater independence in their own regional affairs and more consultation. And maybe in coming months, they would allow Iranians also to join the same group and to have more consultation. So, for example, if you look at the role of these step countries in in brokering some sort of peace between the United States and Iran, is in that direction. They would like to avoid this continuation of war and this conflict, and they would like to stop these things. And for that, Iranians also have to offer certain concessions to the United States and Israelis so that this conflict could be can be avoided. Whether Iranians are at this time are ready or not, my understanding is that Iranians are playing a different game. When I say different game, it means that they know that by escalating the tension, by escalating this war, they have a better gain, which they might have at the end of this war. So as a result, they are not much in hurry to have any kind of diplomatic or negotiated outcome unless there is a major concession from the Trump administration. And that's why you have seen that in the last 2 days, even though they have been talking about a diplomatic solution, but they have also escalated, and they have also increased and intensified the attacks on each other. So Americans have attacked on many Iranian universities, even nuclear installations, especially Israelis have attacked, and many are saying that they have already destroyed some of the nuclear sites. It may not be true, but there are major attacks on nuclear sites in the last 48 hours. Iranian calculation is that the Americans are not ready for any kind of a ground operation. And if they come for a ground operation, it might be the biggest trap for the American administration. And this is not going to be a one-time story, 1 month story, 1 year story. If the ground forces are there in Iran, it may drag for decades, for like what happened in Iran and Afghanistan. For 2 decades, they stayed in Afghanistan, and they run away from Afghanistan in a much more humiliated way. And similar things happen in Iraq as well, and even in Syria. So all American policymakers would be very careful in supporting any kind of ground operation. And my understanding is that the Trump administration is not favoring. J.D. Vance is also not favoring any kind of ground operations so far. They would like to achieve whatever they can achieve by airstrikes and by by Israeli support. And they would like to they would like the Arab countries, especially the GCC countries, to join the American Israelis and join the airstrikes against Iran. But step countries, as I said, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan, they are trying to keep the Gulf countries outside from this conflict, and they are trying to convince each other, look, this is not a war between the Gulf countries and Iran. This is a war of Iranians and Israelis and Americans, and whatever Iranians are doing in the Gulf countries is not directly, they are not trying to destroy the Saudi or the Gulf economy. They are trying to target mostly the American installations or American interest in the region. For example, yesterday they have made a statement, because American strikes have destroyed 2 universities, so Iranians are going to attack at least 2 universities in which American administration is there. So basically, American universities in the region, they are going to make some airstrikes. So in the coming hours or in the coming days, we can have the news that Iranians are going to attack some of the American universities in the Gulf countries. So what I'm trying to say is that the step countries are trying to keep the Gulf countries outside of this war. They are trying to convince each other that we have to keep ourselves outside. However, the thing is that there is a limit. The more attacks happen on Gulf territories, and if there are more attacks, especially on desalination projects, on many other refineries, so it will be very difficult for the Gulf countries to keep quiet and non-responsive for a long time. And ultimately, there will be a point where they have to join this Israeli and American war. So maybe American and Israelis are waiting for that time so that the Gulf countries also join their war. However, it has a cost. And that is why this war is being studied by all global politics experts, all security studies experts in a very careful way, because it is going to create, to offer a new model of warfare which Iran has imposed on the region. We can simply say that the kind of war which we are seeing right now is going into the direction which Iranians wanted from day one. They wanted to have a prolonged conflict. They wanted to have many more parties to join this warfare: Israelis, Americans, even Europeans, even the NATO countries. They would like all of them to join this war, and so that Iran can have expanded reaction on these countries, and maybe ultimately Russians and Chinese are forced to join Iran. So it is a complete different model of warfare which is going right now in the region, and both sides are trying to expand and trying to include other parties. And certain regional countries, they are trying to stay away from this war, this entire conflict. So it is how the Iranian war is going on. My own understanding is that, number one, because of a global order is being is changing much more in favor of Asia, much more in favor of the Middle East, much more in favor of the middle income countries, not in a very abrupt way, but gradually and slowly it is going into that direction. To stop that change in global order, or from their perspective to change this disorder, to have some kind of disturbances and conflicts which they are seeing in case of Iran war, and also in Ukraine. So this is one of the changes which they are looking for. The Middle Eastern countries would like to avoid, because they have seen enough of the war. They have seen the Afghan war for the last 40 years. They have seen the Iraq war. They have seen the Kuwait. They have seen Sudan. So I think most of the Arab countries and Middle Eastern countries are simply fed up of wars which they have been seeing for the last 50 years in their countries. So there is an understanding in these countries that they have to have a diplomacy to stay out of these war, even if they have to offer some kind of concession, even if they have to recognize the state of Israel, and even if they have to recognize the Abraham Accord, which Americans are offering. For example, you have seen the way Syrians are behaving these days. Syrians are simply saying that they are ready to accept Abraham Accord, provided Israel is going to recognize the state of Israel. Or similar position which the Saudis have been maintaining for a long time. So even if Syria is led by one of the most hardliner Islamist Hizbut Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, even though they are led by very hardened Islamic militants, but they are simply becoming more pragmatic, and they are joining the Saudi pragmatism, and they don't want to be in that kind of a conflict. This conflict, this choice for reconciliation, or to avoid the conflict, may be looking bad for many idealist people, including Iran and some other countries. But in longer terms, they might have better human development, better economy, better transformation in their own society, and as a result, they might become better. So this is how the world politics is going to happen. And finally, I would say that Iranians will join the table talk. They will agree to a negotiated outcome. However, they are still going to force the United States and Israel for better concessions, and they might continue this conflict for another 2 weeks, and they would expect better outcomes by building more pressure. So it is very interesting war. It is very interesting conflict which we have seen. Many countries did not expect this kind of warfare, this kind of a conflict, and they did not expect from the Trump administration for an abrupt offer of diplomacy and dialogue with the help of Saudis and Turkeys. So we are here at this position, and I have tried to explain these things and the background. So I hope that this talk might have be helpful for you to understand the broader context and the local context of this war also. I would be very happy to have your questions, and I would like to answer them as briefly as possible. So thank you very much, Salman Saab, for this opportunity, and thank you very much all of you for patiently listening my discussion. Thank you very much. Uh, eh, if you look at our website, and I would, if you open our website, cspsindia.org, Center for Studies of Plural Society is a newly established social science research center in New Delhi. And the core idea of this think tank is that uh, in India, it is a very diverse country, very diverse in the sense of language, in political structure, uh, religion, languages, in every sense. What we lack is that India does not have a pluralistic uh, policy perspectives on social and political affairs. As a result, even though India is growing in much more, in economic sense, it is growing, and there are so much developments, but the thing is that the social disparity is deepening, and social differences are also deepening, for simple fact that most of the subsections of the society are feeling disjointed or disregarded by each other. And as a result, what I think is that India needs a pluralistic political and social understanding. And this is something which has a global factor as well, because the kind of global economy which we are having is going to be irreversible. You cannot go back into the era of nationalism or in the era of a pre-industrial time. So you cannot be that kind of a hardened, limited, restricted nation state. So you are going to become much more connected and becoming more global. In this way, a new political experiment is needed, not just in India, in the United States, in all Europe, in every country. So even though they are trying to become ultra-nationalist, not just in India, every country is trying to become ultra-nationalist to preserve their identity, but they forget the fact that the kind of global economy which they have joined and the kind of global economy which has a future right now, they cannot escape from multiculturalism, from pluralism, and from having that kind of universalism. So in India also, we are trying to have new experiments in our social and political thinking. As of now, there is no institution, such an institution in India, but we are focusing on social and political ideas which are supporting the pluralistic living in India and at global stage. So we are trying to train researchers, scholars, and young scholars. We are trying to have new ideas. We are producing new literature. We are also supporting studies and research on these ideas. So these kind of things are being done. For Indian Muslims, for example, I should say that of course, everyone needs this kind of pluralistic political and social ideas, but Indian Muslims also need these kind of things. So Indian Muslims should be at the forefront of supporting such intellectual movement or intellectual efforts, for simple reason that in the last 70 years, Indian Muslims have not much invested in intellectual activities. In fact, intellectual activities are not considered a normal thing in our society. If to become a writer, to become a fiction writer, to become a non-fiction writer, to become a storyteller, to become a poet, to become a drama writer, to become a film writer, is not considered a something to do. It is considered as if you are not doing anything. So, for example, if I have become a writer, so people will be asking, but what do you do for your living? Still, it is not considered as a job, as a thing to do. Our center is trying to promote social sciences and research on society and politics as a normal thing among Muslim societies also. In their strategic thinking, sometimes we see that the way they give importance to certain ideas may be mismatching from the reality of our society. For example, building a madrasa may be less important, and building a think tank may be more important at this time. To support a PhD program may be more important than supporting a Hafiz Quran. I'm not saying that Hafiz Quran is not important, but having a PhD scholar might be more important. So unfortunately, we have seen that that prioritization of our things and the kind of importance we give the different works is not there. As a result, Indian Muslims do not have a necessary number of thinkers, intellectuals, authors, writers. If you make a list of 1,000 economists in India, 1,000 economists in India, you can easily make a list. You would find maybe 5 or 10 Muslim economists in that list. Among top 50 economists of India, maybe you don't find even one Muslim there. Maybe one or two, I do not know, but we have that kind of list, and we don't have Muslims enough doing there. As a sociologist, as a historian, as a philosopher, even philosophy, I would say that Indian Muslims are not studying, not doing enough study even in philosophy, which should be traditionally a preferred topic for them. I would say that Indian Muslims do need to study more and more philosophy, history, sociology, political science, anthropology, and these kind of all social science related topics. And we have to invest more and more in these efforts. We need to prepare, we need to train scholars, researchers to study all these things. So our Center for Studies of Plural Societies is focusing on these ideas. We are not related to any kind of religious or political ideology, any political party. We are completely independent, and we are not even trying to become a religiously inspired organization. We are working within the framework of our constitution, within the framework of pluralistic ideas. Especially, we are inspired by Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, because he was the first person who had written about the pluralistic ideas. So I would say that CSPS is something which needs support and encouragement from all sections of societies. And we don't need just one CSPS, we need at least 30 CSPS all over India. So not just a CSPS as a one experiment, but we need many more experiments to be adopted and done by Indian Muslims all over country. So if any of you have any interest in practically joining the CSPS, supporting the CSPS, writing for us, doing research for us, I would invite all of you to approach me, to contact me, and to support this institution. And I would like to see this institution become a successful example of Indian Muslims in establishing a new political experiment in India in a way that it should be a new example of multicultural philosophy in which we Indian Muslims, non-Muslims, Dalit, all types of Indians can feel happy, confident, secured, and assured by each other. So that is what CSPS is all about.